All right. Welcome to today's training. We have Karen Hofer. She's going to talk about some curriculum that she's put together, some science-based curriculum in regards to some funding she received for the Hovland Grant. And before we get started with that, I want to remind everybody that there is a chat area on your GoToMeeting screen that allows you to chat in questions, and we'll be watching that. And also, I'm sure Karen will be stopping and asking about questions throughout. And when we're done, she is going to share the curriculum unit with the whole curriculum unit with you, so you will have access to that at the end. Let me see. I am going to go ahead and give Karen the access and make her a presenter. So you will be able to see her screen in just a minute. All right, Karen, you have everything you need?
I think I do.
All right, let you get started.
Thank you. So welcome to Science for Success. Notice on this first screen I do have my email address here at Cornerstones, and so you can always go back and look at the recording or write it down now if you think you might have questions. But one of my main ideas for putting this on the screen is, one moment please. Oh. No, I don't see it here. Okay. Share. Yep. Now does it see it? Okay, good. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought that everybody could see what I was doing. Apparently not. So whoops. Anyway, I started to say my web address is right here. And if you have questions, concerns, if you find things that you think would work well for this curriculum that I should consider adding to it or anything of that sort, please send me an email and I'll have a look at it. So with that, I hope you find something worthwhile today to take away from the presentation. Today I'm going to focus on life science. And my lessons, which are more like mini units, are posted on the South Dakota All website for you to view, to print, to use however you'd like. Each of the lessons lists the web's depth of knowledge, the South Dakota Science standards that I hope we all reach with the lessons, or our students reach, the college and career readiness standards as well, and any lesson plan that you see that comes from Cornerstones uses the same format. And so I'm going to show you what a Cornerstones lesson plan looks like. So I'll escape from this and this. And this is a lesson plan. So what I'm talking about, you have the objectives. Notice over here I've put how long I think it will take to complete that lesson, or at least that's how long it will take me. All the materials, including when you get down to here where we did an experiment, all of the ingredients and the measurements per student. And then the vocabulary words, the web's depth of knowledge, the South Dakota Science Standards, and an introduction. The introduction you can read, you can just summarize in your own words. It doesn't matter, but at least you know what's there, and all you have to do is pick it up and use it. The instructional activities that are down here, I'll use them in this order. If for some reason that doesn't work for you and you want to change it, that's fine. But notice the student product at the very bottom too. The student product is the assignment. You can collect it, comment on it orally or in writing, put it in the student's folder, return it to them right away. It doesn't matter. So Going back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So the content areas for science are life science, physical science, and earth and space science. And I'm concentrating on life science today. I did that the first year that I got the Hovland grant. This last year I've worked on physical science, and I will post that on South Dakota All as well. I'm not quite ready to do that yet because I haven't taught it to my students, and I'd like to do that before I post it for all of you. And then I haven't even touched Earth Space yet, but I hope I get to it sometime soon. The GED test, as I'm sure most of you know, if not all of you know, breaks science into those three areas. And so the test also is 34 questions. So that means 40% of the test is life science questions, 40% physical science questions, and 20% earth space questions. That calculates out to 13.6 life science questions, the same amount of physical science questions, and 6.8 earth space questions. So it's a lot of work for a few questions, but no, we don't know what they're going to be asked, so obviously you have to teach it all. I show a video the first day of class from YouTube, and it's called Everything You Should Know About GED Science Exam, and that gives the students an overview, and it's 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Now that will be listed with the hot link, the hyperlink, on that first lesson plan that I showed you. We sent out an email attachment as well with all of the resources I use for this class prior to the presentation. I try to open class each day with vocabulary for the lesson. If not, it seems like the students are trying to copy everything down and they don't really get to concentrate on what we're doing. So I advise pre-teaching the vocabulary, making that your first thing to do each day. I'm not listing all of the websites on the PowerPoint, just the ones that I intend to click on to show you something from that website. But as I said, if you've got the email, you can print a list for yourself, you can put it in your important file. It should also be on the South Dakota All site. So there are a variety of ways to get those links. Life science, the first 40%, is divided into these topics: organization of life, genetics and heredity, human body and health, evolution and ecosystems. So this would be 2 to 3 questions on each of these topics. And I think they're huge topics. I have 2 lessons on the organization of life. The first one covers the scientific theory, the cell components, photosynthesis, and cellular respiration. The second lesson is on mitosis and meiosis, and it took me 5 classes to cover all of this material. Many of my students are somewhere in the level 5 to 8, so maybe some of you could move faster than I can. My favorite part of this topic is the energy for life functions, and after discussing cellular respiration and chemical reactions, we talked about fermentation and made homemade ginger ale, and it was ready to drink within 24 hours. Believe me, you need to keep watch on it or it will explode. The students loved it, and I had 2 little boys that came up to me after we did this in class and asked me if I could teach their mom to cook anything else. So she had made ginger ale at home, and I thought that was great. So the first link I have here, which I'll open up, is on microorganisms. And the microorganism site is from the BBC. And so sometimes you're going to perhaps question the spelling, like yogurt up here. But what you're supposed to do is learn about microorganisms. And so you look around at the picture, and the students could do this by using a Surface or a laptop. You could do it together in class with an LCD projector and one computer it is up to you what you do with the lesson. But it presents the information quite simply and I think in depth enough for them to understand. So I'm going to click on this lady with the spots and she moves over to a window. The yogurt, another place where there are microorganisms, the raw food, bread, the moldy fruit, and the pile of leaves. Notice I have my magnifying glasses by every one of them. So when I click on that, it takes me to a page where it talks about the bacteria in yogurt. And so there's a little paragraph for each of those 6 items. When you're done reading through all of those, you can take the quiz. Once again, you can do that together or separately. Doesn't really matter. It says most microorganisms cannot be seen without a microscope. When you click that answer, it says, right, a microscope is for looking at tiny things like microorganisms. So you go on to the next question. Which of these is not true about microorganisms? Well, if I said they reproduce, no, microorganisms do reproduce like other living things. It says which of these is not true. So I could, if I got that wrong, I could go back to the activity and I could read about microorganisms. I could read any one of these that I wanted or all of them again. But when I go back to the quiz, it takes me to that same question. It doesn't let me change my answer, but I go on. And that's what it does. And I think there are a total of 10 questions. And then that's it for this site. But it's kind of a nice, I thought, easy way to start the lesson. And I didn't want that. Not yet. So then my next section is on cell structure. And there's so much terminology with cell structure. And I tried to give the students the terms that I thought they had to have at this point. I didn't want to overwhelm them with all the vocabulary that could possibly be used in these lessons. So I just told them to just concentrate on what I gave them, which will be listed on probably the second lesson plan, and that we would discuss more of the terms in depth at a later time. But with the Cells Alive website, there's one for mitosis and one for meiosis. And what happens with this is that when you hit the play button down here at the bottom that I'm having trouble seeing, there you are, it goes through the process very, very quickly. So I could play that over and over and over again and still not be fast enough to see all the changes occurring. But if you go over here on the right-hand side, it shows you each stage. And you can look at those as long as you want because you're the one in control. I can get rid of the annoying beep. And what I did with this was I had worksheets that you'll see are attached to the lesson that I printed out first, and they were supposed to identify each of these stages of cell division. And so we had the worksheets in front of us. When we looked at this, we examined what was happening, and then we could write in on the worksheet what it is that each of these were, like the prophase, the metaphase, and so on. I also had with this lesson two rap songs. One, which I printed for the students, helped with some of the terminology. There were actually, like I said, 2 songs with the lesson. The second one is a science teacher singing and playing his guitar, and he's talking about both animal and plant cells, and it's very repetitive, and I suppose that's good. I promise you it will get stuck in your head, but hopefully it helps the students. We read through the rap more than once, and I'm hoping that sometime when I teach it that we get to film it and put it on the Cornerstones Facebook page. But obviously the students get to keep those songs as well. I learn well with music. I think most people do, and so I like to include the songs when I can to help them remember it. There are also quizzes for mitosis and meiosis as well. And when we were done with the quizzes, I printed them out and we worked on those during the videos, but when we were done, we went through the quizzes together and I hit the correct button, and if they got something wrong, we talked about it and we went on. I thought it was a particularly difficult portion of science for my students, and I hope that all of these things help them to have a better handle on the whole cell division process. The next section then was genetics and heredity, and these are, once again, the subtopics within that section. And so this lesson is largely about how people pass traits on to their children. Since so many of my students are also parents, we've had some very interesting discussions. I have an article included with this lesson that is from the Cleveland Clinic that describes the process of human development with what I thought was just enough but not too much detail, describing what happens each month of the baby's development. I've also placed here a Similac website that we'll go to now, maybe. There it is. And there's a great deal here, and of course you have to put up with a little advertisement from Similac, and that's okay. But when you have the little dot set on each week, it tells you what's happening with the baby at that time. You see it has nutrition and health that everybody should be paying attention to while they're pregnant, and exercise, and so on and so on. But with this little line graph, if I go to, say, the 4th week, oh, 5 weeks, okay, as your baby's heart begins to beat and vital organs begin to form. Always shows a picture of the baby as well, what it looks like at that time. And obviously, if you click on this, you get to read more. 1/17 of an inch at week 5 on average. So it is by far from the only website out there. You know, there are so many of them that I'm not sure that it's easy to even choose anymore. I know there are apps for phones that compare the baby's size to a fruit or a vegetable every week to give a parent something tangible with which to relate. And I hope that all of these lessons make the whole process much more real for the student if it wasn't already. The other thing that I have is Mary Gaston, who spoke at Summer Summit 2016, gave us many activities, and I used one of hers in this lesson, and it is on genotype and phenotype. It's called Frankenfish. I hope some of you remember doing that. Another one that I like, though, was from Glencoe, and it's called Build a Monster. And so you go into the site, and you read over here all kinds of things about how traits are passed on from parents to offspring. And then you can choose eyes for your monster. And in this case, you know, the capital E, one eye is the dominant, two eyes is recessive. When you click on Perform the Genetic Cross, you see what it looks like, what the Punnett square looks like. And then you can put up what that is. If it's two capital E's, it's going to be, sure. Oh, I know it's up here. It's one eye. And of course my mouse has to be stubborn right now. And then this would once again be one eye, and two eyes. Now, if you've done something wrong, instead of being red, it's going to show up in yellow when you check it like that. So now I can choose what to make my monster have, one eye or two. So I click on it and I have a one eye in the middle of my monster's head. Then you go on to do the other 5 traits and you've built a monster. So I hope that the students would find that fun and that they learned something about dominant and recessive traits from doing that. Okay, our next section is on the human body and health. These are your subtopics, body systems, and so on. Another huge section. So the human body and health is very interesting to me, and I think probably most people. But in this instance, I so wish that I knew the 2 or 3 questions that would be asked so I could teach those items and move on. I say that because it's an overwhelming section. Since we don't have the resources to do many labs and I don't even want to think about living and non-living visual aids, I relied heavily on YouTube videos to explain the 11 systems of the body. I also had an activity at the end of the unit where the students worked in small groups on something called Organ Trail. Remember the old uh, game called Oregon Trail? Well, this is kind of like that. But what it is each group is assigned an organ, and they can use whatever resources they can find, whether it's books or computers or anything, and they make a poster with a template that you give them, and they must put on their poster the functions of the organ, the diseases that affect the organ, and which body system the organ is part of. And then the group presents their poster to the class, and you can have the posters all become a bulletin board for your class. I could see that you could easily change this and make it more technology friendly. You could have the students make their own PowerPoints or use some other web-based product and show the research in that way. My students, I don't think, would mind making the posters. They would enjoy using the computers. So it's easy to change it up with each group that you have. The nutritional parts of the lesson, I think, pair very well with the Empower Math books. Many chapters in the Empower books have something to do with nutrition or health or exercise, and many times we had cross-curricular discussions while we were doing this. I've also worn a fitness tracker of some sort for a couple of years. I've worn 4 or 5 different brands, and I was introduced to the MyFitnessPal free app with my Fitbit tracker. And many of my students have the app on their phones, and so we've kept track of water, calories, protein, etc. by using that app. It has a section on nutrition that shows pie graphs of your carbs, your fats, your protein for each day, and your percentage goal for that day as well. Under nutrients, it gives the protein and the carbohydrates again, and it lists fiber, sugars, fats, and it goes on and on. It has recipes. Some are gluten-free, some are high in protein, some are vegetarian, and these are all sent to your phone every day or the computer if you would rather have it come to your computer. So they send exercise tips. I think I've barely scratched the surface of what's available at that site. But another site that I really like is the MyPlate site, myplate.gov. And one of the reasons I like it is because I can go into so many different areas, and with the I'm actually looking for something. That's why I'm going, it does have someplace in this a side-by-side nutrient comparison, and I am not seeing it right here, right now, but I know that it's also in the next portion, which is back on the slide, the Super Tracker. The Super Tracker you can get to through MyPlate. You can get to MyPlate through Super Tracker. You know, they're both government sites. But this is what I was looking for. That's why I just went over here, because I knew it was on the first page of the Super Tracker site. So you put in the food that you want to find out about over here. That's just all the different food groups. But I'm going to put in quinoa. I'm going to say I want it cooked with no fat, no salt. Boring. And then I'm going to put in rice. This quinoa is sort of like rice. And then I've got it side by side on my page. And you're thinking, okay, what's so special about that? Well, when you click on nutrient info and nutrient info on both of them, look at how much it breaks out. Many, many, many facts about the nutrients. I can find out that the calories are more in the quinoa, but look at the protein. I have 8 grams of protein. Over here I have only 4. Carbohydrates are less with the quinoa than with the rice. Dietary fiber is better. Fat is also, well, look at it, 4 grams with quinoa, which really isn't bad. 0 with rice, though, unless you add some kind of fat to it. And it goes on. Calcium, 31 milligrams, 16 with a cup of rice. Potassium, much more potassium in quinoa than in the rice. And, you know, that's just one little thing that you get with Super Tracker. The students have been very interested in these things, the ones that I've had. So these are 6 different windows that you can go and look at in Super Tracker. However, one thing that I did to help my students to be more familiar with this site, with how to use it, was I went into choosemyplate.gov Tools Super Tracker. When you go into that,
Karen, can I ask a question?
absolutely,
This is John over from Mitchell.
yes, yes.
For the Choose My Plate, does it actually include the sugar that you should do? Because I know a lot of the stuff they put on the labels now doesn't include the daily sugar intake.
I think it does. I do
Okay.
think it does, because you go in and you can make an account for yourself where you put in how many calories you think you should have in a day, and it'll suggest it for you if you're not sure, and whether you want to maintain weight, lose weight, you know, what it is that you're trying to accomplish by doing this. And then it should break it out. It should give you the sugar too, because it gives you everything. You can see it's quite detailed. So I haven't paid much attention to the sugar, but I think it's there, John. So with the Super Tracker, was there anything else, John?
No, it's just,
Okay.
no, it was just some nutrition labels don't put it on there, so.
Yeah. With the Super Tracker site, see this little link on scavenger hunt? The scavenger hunt is a worksheet. Here's your set of directions for how to use the site that you can print out for your students. And then, if I can get it to move for me, I probably have so many things open that I'm slowing it all down. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I need to close some things. Okay, so with this, notice I have questions here. This is the worksheet. So it tells them, go back to Foodipedia where I was looking at the quinoa and the rice side by side, choose 2 snacks. It really doesn't care what they choose. And focusing on the calories, that's fine. All they want to do is teach them how to use the site. And then it goes on with, I think it's only 6 questions, but it allows them, here it is, personalize a profile. So you can do that if you would like to, and that's where you can put in what it is that you're trying to accomplish by using the site. But I have had my students do this for themselves, and I hope that it's made a difference for them. Sometimes, we talk about their kids here instead of them, and I think everybody wants to do a better job for their kids than what they have done for themselves. But that portion on nutrition is a big part. And notice then we still have transmission of disease. So for transmission of disease, I started with a PBS video on the immune system, and then I had them watch another video that was on disease and how it spread, and finished with a TED Ed video on pandemics, and completed a worksheet provided by TED Ed. The TED Ed worksheet is meant to be done online, but you can copy and paste it into a Word document. But whenever I do that, I always give credit to TED Ed, and I'm sure all of you would do the same thing. I ended this section with a 10-minute writing practice for GED, and it actually is a practice that comes from the GED site. And I had them I had them write, I do think about the transmission of disease. The question was on something to do with transmission of disease. So then the next section is evolution. And within evolution, we have common ancestry, selection, and adaptation. And I think it's a fascinating topic, but it is one that, as a public school teacher for 30 years, I felt like I had to skirt around it, and I'm still kind of leery about what to say to adults about evolution. So there's a video called What Exactly is Evolution that explains the process easily and simply, clearly, and it is a good kickoff to the lesson. And I have it here for you. I'm not going to have you watch the whole 5 minutes, but I am going to just click on it now and have you watch, maybe a minute of it before I stop it and come back. So here we go. So I hope you like that. What they do from there is they start using every one of the fingers to remember some of the process of evolution. And I thought it would work for my students quite well. I hope it would work for yours too. So the other thing that I've got here is a really long video, and it goes into um, speech and how speech evolves and how we think that humans are the only species that speak with, I guess, any complexity. But then it goes on to talk about birds, which is why it says bird brains up on the screen. And birds, we think, have a teeny tiny little brain, but birds have an undeserved reputation for low brain power. In fact, they produce one of the most glorious sounds in nature, birdsong. How do their brains do it? Well, in this video, they tell us about evolution and another remarkable phenomenon, human language. So they are connecting birdsong and human language. There's an Australian songbird called the zebra finch that's shedding light on babbling in babies and stuttering and neurological processes of understanding and making sounds. The evidence of the evolution of birdsong as well as human speech may lie in our own genes, including an intriguing gene called FOXP2. So the second video of this lesson, Bird Brains, is a PBS video and it explores this topic. I'll show you just a little about one as well. And so here's the NOVA site, and then here's the little video. I hope. Well, obviously I can't show you 50 minutes of video, and you can go to that on your own. You don't need me to do that, but I just thought it was worthwhile to show you the beginnings of it. I don't think I'd show the whole thing to my students, but I don't know if you noticed at the bottom of the window there were little subsections. So on YouTube they'd normally be divided up into more than one video, but just the same, look at it more if you're interested in it. And then my last section for life science is on ecosystems. And according to learner.org, ecology is the scientific study of relationships in the natural world. It includes relationships between organisms and their physical environments, between organisms in the same species, between organisms of different species, between organisms and the changes of matter and energy through biological systems. Ecologists study these interactions in order to understand the abundance and diversity of life within Earth's ecosystems. In other words, why there are so many plants and animals and why there are so many different types of plants and animals. So food chains are simple models of matter and energy flow in an ecosystem. And the number of people and other living organisms or crops that a region can support without ruining or depleting the environment is the carrying capacity. Symbiosis is the close connection between different types and organisms in which they live together and benefit from each other. And the ecosystem disruption can be defined as the effect on the environment where human subsistence has altered the environment to the extent that the survival of the species is threatened. I actually show 3 videos with this lesson that discuss those topics, and they are about the various ecosystems and the disruption of those ecosystems. So we actually, when we get to the end of this lesson, we start talking about South Dakota. We talk about the things that the students are familiar with about South Dakota ecosystems. For instance, the fact that the pheasant isn't a native bird to South Dakota, and how did that affect South Dakota ecosystem since there was no predator for the pheasant. Of course, we know man is the predator now. That was probably always the plan. We talk about Yellowstone and how the wolves were taken out of Yellowstone and then reintroduced to Yellowstone, about the flying carp and how it is taking over waterways around the United States. We've talked about the nutria in Louisiana and how the nutria was brought in to take care of vegetation, but because it had no natural predator, it took over Louisiana, and now they have a hunting season for nutria every year, and people eat nutria just to try to keep them under control. And so I think it's kind of nice that we bring in the South Dakota connection, and because some of the videos show things worldwide, and one of the videos that I liked particularly was about global warming. I know I shouldn't say that. It's a bad topic this week with Mr. Trump, but anyway, they talk about the polar bear and how if the ice caps melt, will the polar bear survive? And about how there are so many things that we aren't even able to predict that would change in the environment. I mean, some things obviously they know. The things that the polar bear eats would thrive, but what are all of the ramifications that we have no idea about right now? So I think the students find this very interesting, maybe because I do. So I've got a couple of, once again, websites. This is the a food web. And I'm going to take you to that. And I think we actually have to launch it. And we're going to you can see you can go to all of these things and learn from them. But we're going to go to the food web game. So after you spend some time with videos, with reading, because there is a book that goes along with this class, and there are anywhere from 2 to probably 6 pages that you read from a textbook on each of these topics. But with this game, you're going to try to figure out who the predators are, what the top of the food chain is, who eats what. And so let's say I take bacteria and I put it here. Maybe I put krill here. And I think, okay, so what eats krill? Well, seals probably eat krill. I think killer whales, everybody would figure out that's probably the top of the food chain. So I put it there. Blue whales probably eat seals and are eaten by killer whales, so I'll put it there. Algae produced by the sun. Fish no doubt eat algae. Birds eat algae. Maybe, I don't know, birds might eat fish. But I drag them all, and then I check my answers. And everything in green is correct. Everything in red is incorrect. So I try again, and all those things disappear, but these things that I got right stay. So I don't have to remember where I placed everything. I can try again. I can go back and I can look at algae. I can go to the table and I can find out algae is a primary producer. Who eats algae? Krill fish and blue whales. Oh, okay. Seals. It's a high consumer. It's eaten by, or it eats fish and birds, and it's eaten by killer whales. So I can make a more educated guess about my food chain by doing that. And I think the students would have a good time playing with this and learn as they went. So with that, I have those lessons, plus on the last day of life science, then I have tests that I have on websites, web-based tests that I send the students to practice with their new knowledge, to see what they've learned and to find out what they still don't know, so that they have a reason to keep coming back to class and going on to the next section, which is physical science. And I'm wondering if you have any questions, because I think I'm out of things to say.
Karen, this is Royce. About how far are you along on the physical science? You said you just need to teach.
Teach it? Yes. I am nearly finished with the physical science. So I have about the same amount of lessons with the physical science. And then obviously the earth space, I won't have as much. Did I lose you?
Nope. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to take back the screen because I want to show you something really fast. Maybe. All right, so if you're interested in downloading the curriculum and utilizing it, if you go to the South Dakota All webpage, and right now our South Dakota All webpage is very outdated, but we're in the process of a total rehaul. We have a webmaster who's working on this, and we're just to the point he needs me to send him more stuff to get it finished. But it's still here. So right now, if you go to the home page, southdakotall.org, and you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll say read about our new Science for Success curriculum. If you click on that, you can read about it. And if you go back, you can go ahead and download the curriculum. And all the stuff is available there. If you want to print it off and utilize it, you sure can. It's available to you to use. Any other questions from anybody today? Our upcoming professional development curriculums are going to focus on, did you ever have something just fly out of your head? Because that sure did. Yeah, unpacking the new standards that we are working on for intakes, assessments, eligibility for the national reporting system. And I'm actually working on the email right now to get that sent out to everyone. If no one has any other questions, I'd like to thank you for your time and thank Karen for sharing this with us. And wish everybody a good day.
Right. Thank you, Karen.